The rejection email glowed on Victoria Chen's laptop screen like a death sentence. She read it again, the words blurring through the rage building behind her eyes. We've decided to move forward with Thomas Bradley for the senior marketing manager position. Her coffee had gone cold. The Friday afternoon crowd at the cafe hummed around her, oblivious to the sound of her carefully built future crumbling. 24 years old, top of her class, 3 years of flawless performance reviews, and still, not enough. The autumn wind sliced through her blazer as she stepped onto Chicago's downtown streets, making her feel exposed, vulnerable, stripped bare. An hour later, she sat across from James Parker in his corner office. Leather chair, mahogany desk, the scent of expensive cologne masking something rotten underneath. "I know you're disappointed about the promotion," James said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "But you have to understand, Victoria. Thomas brings something to the table that you simply don't have yet." "Which is what exactly?" Victoria's nails dug into her palms. James leaned back, studying her like a specimen under glass. "Experience. Life experience. Our clients are sophisticated people who've lived in the world. They need someone who can relate to their level of maturity." Heat crawled up her neck. "Are you saying I'm not mature enough?" "I'm saying you're young, sheltered. You went from college straight into work. You've never really lived." He leaned forward, his eyes hard despite the soft tone. "Our biggest client specifically requested someone with more worldly experience, someone who understands the complexities of adult relationships and business dynamics." The implication settled over her like ash. Victoria knew exactly what he meant, even if he'd never say it directly. "You're talking about my personal life." "I'm talking about the complete package." James smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Look, take the weekend. Think about how you want to present yourself moving forward. There will be other opportunities, but only if you're willing to grow beyond your current limitations." Victoria's apartment felt like a prison cell that night. She paced the narrow space between her kitchen and living room, James's words echoing in her skull. The unfairness of it burned in her chest, hot and bitter. She thought about her life. The safe choices, the responsible path. While her college friends were dating and exploring, Victoria had studied. While her coworkers went out for drinks and weekend adventures, she'd worked late, prepared presentations, built a foundation that was supposed to matter. Instead, her carefully constructed life had become a cage. Her phone buzzed. A text from Damien Cross. "Haven't heard from you all week. Everything okay?" Victoria stared at his name. Damien. Her best friend since childhood, before his tech company exploded and made him one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Despite everything, he'd never changed toward her. Never made her feel small. She typed and deleted 3 responses before finally sending, "Can I come over tonight?" "Need to talk." His reply came instantly. "Always. I'll be home by 8. Damien's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a glass tower overlooking Lake Michigan. Victoria had been there dozens of times, but tonight felt different. Tonight, she was coming with a request that could shatter everything between them. The elevator opened directly into his living space. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city lights below, glittering like broken promises. Damien was waiting for her, still in his work clothes but with his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up. At 28, he'd grown into his height and broad shoulders, his dark hair slightly tousled from running his hands through it during long meetings. "You look like you've had the day from hell," he said, concern etching lines around his eyes. Victoria dropped her bag on his marble counter. The words were already rising in her throat, dangerous and desperate. "I need you to ruin me." Damien froze, a glass of whiskey halfway to his lips. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. "What?" "You heard me." Victoria's voice shook, but she held his gaze. "I need you to sleep with me. One night. No strings. I need to stop being the good girl who plays by all the rules and still loses." The glass hit the counter with a sharp crack. Damien's jaw clenched, something dark and unreadable flashing across his face. "Victoria, what happened today?" "Answer the question, Damien." She stepped closer, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Will you do it or not?" He stared at her for a long moment, the city lights reflecting in his eyes like stars burning out. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. barely controlled. "You have no idea what you're asking me." "Then tell me." Damien moved toward her slowly, deliberately, until she could feel the heat radiating off his body. His hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb brushing her cheek with a gentleness that made her breath catch. "I've been in love with you since we were 17 years old," he whispered. "So no, Victoria, I won't give you one night. If you want me, you're going to have to let me keep you." The ground disappeared beneath her feet. Victoria's world tilted on its axis. The city lights behind Damien blurred into streaks of color as his words sank into her bones. "You're in love with me?" Her voice came out broken, barely above a whisper. Damien's hand was still on her face, his thumb tracing slow circles on her cheek. "Did you really not know?" "No, I just thought we were friends." "Best friends." "We are." His eyes held hers, dark and intense. "But I've wanted more for years. I stayed quiet because I thought you needed space to build your life. I thought if I waited long enough, you'd see me differently." He dropped his hand, stepping back. "But not like this. Not when you're angry and hurt and looking for a way to prove something to an asshole who doesn't deserve your time." Victoria's chest tightened. She felt exposed, raw, like he'd stripped away every defense she'd built. "So that's it? You're saying no?" "I'm saying you need to tell me what happened today." The real story. The dam broke. Victoria told him everything. The rejection, James's implications about her personal life, the realization that her dedication meant nothing compared to arbitrary perceptions of worldliness and experience. By the time she finished, tears were streaming down her face, hot and angry. Damien's expression had gone cold, dangerous. "Give me his name again." "James Parker." "But Damien, you can't just swoop in and fix this with money or power." "That's not what I need." "Then what do you need?" Victoria wiped her eyes, steadying her breath. "I need to stop living in a cage. I need to take control of my own life, and I need someone I trust to help me do it." She met his gaze, unflinching. "You said if I want you, I have to let you keep me. What if I said yes? What if this becomes real?" Damien went very still. "You don't know what you're offering." "Then show me." The air between them crackled with electricity. Damien moved closer again, his body nearly touching hers, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "If we do this, there are rules. This isn't some casual arrangement where we pretend nothing's changed. If I touch you, you're mine. Completely. No half measures. No backing out when things get complicated." Victoria's pulse raced. "What kind of rules?" "You move in here, with me. We tell people we're together, no hiding. And you let me take care of you while you figure out your next move, whether that's staying at your company or burning it to the ground. That's not a relationship. That's ownership." Damien's smile was sharp, almost predatory. "You came here asking me to ruin you, Victoria. You wanted to stop being the good girl. This is what that looks like. I'm not interested in pretending. Either you're all in, or we forget this conversation ever happened." She should walk away. Every rational part of her brain screamed to leave, to process her emotions like a reasonable adult. But reason had gotten her nowhere. Playing it safe had left her empty-handed and humiliated. "Okay," she breathed. "I'm in." Damien's eyes flashed with something fierce and possessive. "Say it again." "I'm yours." He kissed her then, and it wasn't gentle. His mouth claimed hers with years of pent-up hunger and frustration, his hands tangling in her hair as he pulled her against him. Victoria gasped, her body igniting like she'd touched a live wire. This wasn't the sweet, tentative first kiss she'd imagined years ago. This was raw, consuming, dangerous. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "Pack a bag tonight," Damien said, his voice rough. "I'm sending a car for your things tomorrow. As of right now, you live here." Victoria nodded, still dizzy from the kiss. "What about work?" "Monday morning, you walk into that office and hand in your 2 weeks' notice. Then you let me handle the rest." "Damien, I can't just quit. I need to work. I need my career." His expression softened slightly. "I'm not asking you to give up your career. I'm asking you to stop wasting it on people who don't value you. Trust me, Victoria. 2 weeks and you'll have options you never imagined." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. Damien glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. "What is it?" He turned the phone toward her. An email notification glowed on the screen. The sender, James Parker. The subject line, regarding Victoria Chen. Damien opened the email, and Victoria read over his shoulder. Her blood turned to ice. Damien, heard through the grapevine that you and Victoria are close. Thought you should know she's been struggling with maturity issues that have affected her professional advancement. If you're considering any business dealings that involve her, I'd advise caution. Some people simply aren't ready for high-stakes environments. Best, James. He's trying to sabotage me, Victoria whispered, horror washing over her. He's preemptively ruining my reputation. Damien's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle twitching. When he looked at her, his eyes held a cold fury that made her shiver. He just made the biggest mistake of his life, Damien said quietly. And you're about to watch me destroy him. The promise in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel powerful for the first time in days. Monday morning arrived like a reckoning. Victoria stood outside her office building, the weight of her resignation letter burning in her bag. She'd spent the weekend in Damien's penthouse, watching him work through the night, making calls, pulling strings she didn't fully understand. You don't have to do this if you're not ready, Damien had told her that morning, his arms wrapped around her from behind as they watched the sunrise over the lake. I'm ready, she'd replied, even though her hands were shaking. Now, in the cold October air, she wasn't so sure, but she pushed through the revolving doors anyway, rode the elevator to the 14th floor, and walked straight into James Parker's office. He looked up from his computer, surprise flickering across his face. Victoria, I wasn't expecting you today. I'm resigning. She pulled out the letter and placed it on his desk. Effective in 2 weeks. James's expression hardened. I see. Did you really think running to Damien Cross would solve your problems? That email I sent him was a professional courtesy. You might want to reconsider burning bridges. The only bridge burning here is you, James. Victoria's voice was steady, cold, and you're about to find out exactly what that means. She turned and walked out, ignoring his calls after her. By the time she reached her desk, her phone was already buzzing. A text from Damien. It's done. Check your email. Victoria opened her inbox. 3 new messages. The first was from the CEO of her company, requesting an urgent meeting. The second was from the head of marketing at Cross Technologies, offering her a senior director position with a salary that made her current one look insulting. The third was from James's biggest client, the one who'd supposedly requested someone with more worldly experience. She opened the last email first. Ms. Chen, I've recently learned that James Parker misrepresented my preferences regarding the senior marketing manager position. I specifically requested you for the role, based on your innovative campaign work. I'm appalled by his manipulation and have terminated our contract with his firm. If you're open to discussing opportunities, I'd like to speak with you directly. Victoria's hands trembled. She looked up to find her co-workers staring at her, whispers spreading through the office like wildfire. Within an hour, James was called into the CEO's office. Within 2 hours, he was cleaning out his desk, his face ashen with rage. As he passed her cubicle, he stopped, leaning in close enough that only she could hear. You think you've won? You think Damien Cross gives a damn about you beyond what you can offer him? His voice was venom. Men like him don't fall in love, Victoria. They collect. And when he's done with you, you'll have nothing left. The words burrowed under her skin, planting seeds of doubt she couldn't shake. That evening, Victoria returned to the penthouse to find it transformed. Candles flickered across every surface. A private chef had prepared dinner. Damien was waiting for her on the terrace, champagne glasses in hand, the city sprawling beneath them like a kingdom. Congratulations, he said, handing her a glass. James Parker is finished. His career, his reputation, all of it, gone. Victoria took the champagne but didn't drink. You destroyed him in a day. He tried to destroy you. I simply returned the favor. Damien studied her face. You're not happy. Why? Because I don't know if I earned anything today or if it was all you pulling strings behind the scenes. She set down her glass. The job offers, the client reaching out, even James getting fired. How much of that was real? And how much was you manipulating everything? Damien's expression darkened. You think I manufactured your talent? Your 3 years of perfect work? The campaigns you built that brought in millions? I think you have the power to make people see what you want them to see." "That's not an answer to my question." Victoria turned away, staring out at the city lights. "I don't know what's real anymore, Damien. A week ago we were best friends. Now I'm living in your penthouse, sleeping in your bed, watching you dismantle people's lives with a few phone calls. It's intoxicating and terrifying, and I don't know which version of us is the truth." Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. When Damien finally spoke, his voice was low, almost dangerous. "You want to know the truth? I've spent 10 years building an empire, and not once have I used it for personal revenge. Not until you asked me to help you take control of your life, and I did. But if that makes you uncomfortable, if you think I'm some puppet master manipulating you, then maybe James was right. Maybe you're not ready for this world." The words struck like a physical blow. Victoria whirled to face him. "That's not fair. None of this is fair, Victoria." Damien moved toward her, his eyes blazing. "You came to me broken and asked me to fix it. You offered yourself to me and said you were all in. Now you're questioning everything because you're scared of how much power we have together. So tell me, what do you actually want? Because I can't keep guessing. I want to know if you love me or if you love the idea of owning me." The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Damien stared at her for a long moment, something cracking behind his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was raw, stripped of all pretense. "I love you enough to walk away if that's what you need. I love you enough to give you every advantage I have, even if you hate me for it. I love you enough to burn the world down if it means keeping you safe." He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. "But you're right about one thing. I want to own you. I want every piece of you, the broken parts and the brilliant parts, the fear and the fire. So if that's not what you want, tell me now, because I can't do this halfway." Victoria's breath caught. She saw it then, the truth beneath all his power and control. Damien was just as scared as she was, just as desperate to hold on to something real in a world built on transactions and illusions. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. He kissed her then, and it was different from before, softer, more vulnerable, like he was letting her see the man beneath the armor. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "If you want to know what Damien's really been hiding, meet me at Grant Park tomorrow. 2 p.m. Alone. A friend." Victoria's blood ran cold. She looked up at Damien, whose expression had gone carefully blank. "Who was that?" "I don't know." She showed him the message. Damien read it, his jaw clenching. "Don't go." "Why not?" "Because whoever sent that is trying to drive a wedge between us, and I won't let them. Or maybe they're trying to show me something you don't want me to see." Victoria pulled back, her heart pounding. "What are you hiding from me, Damien?" The look in his eyes made her stomach drop. Guilt, fear, something dark and desperate. "Victoria, please, trust me on this." But the doubt James had planted was growing roots, and the mysterious text had watered them. Victoria grabbed her coat, her hands shaking. "I need some air. I need to think. Don't do this. Don't walk away right now." But she was already moving toward the elevator, her mind spinning with questions she couldn't answer. As the doors closed, she saw Damien standing in the middle of his perfect penthouse, looking more lost than she'd ever seen him. The betrayal, when it came, would be worse than either of them imagined. Victoria arrived at Grant Park 15 minutes early, her breath misting in the cold October air. The trees had shed most of their leaves, leaving skeletal branches clawing at the gray sky. She sat on a bench near the fountain, watching families and joggers pass by, wondering if she was making a terrible mistake. She hadn't told Damien she was coming. She'd left the penthouse the night before and stayed at her old apartment, ignoring his calls and texts. The silence between them felt like a chasm widening with every hour. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman approached, mid-30s, dressed in an expensive coat, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She sat down beside Victoria without introduction. "Thank you for coming," the woman said. "I wasn't sure you would. Who are you?" "My name is Elena Petrov. I used to work for Damien. 5 years ago, I was his director of operations." She pulled out a folder, placing it carefully on the bench between them. "And I need you to know what kind of man you're dealing with before it's too late." Victoria's stomach twisted. If you're here to trash Damien because he fired you or something, I'm not interested. He didn't fire me. I quit. Elena's eyes held something dark, haunted. Do you know how Cross Technologies grew so fast? How a 23-year-old kid went from a startup to a billion-dollar empire in 5 years? He's brilliant. He saw opportunities others missed. He saw vulnerabilities others wouldn't exploit. Elena opened the folder. Inside were documents, emails, contracts. Damien doesn't just compete in business, Victoria. He destroys. He finds people's weaknesses, their secrets, their fears, and he weaponizes them. The 3 competitors who could have challenged him, one lost his company to a manufactured scandal. Another had his funding pulled after mysterious allegations of fraud. The 3rd committed suicide after his entire life's work was stolen and rebranded. Victoria's hands went numb. You're lying. I wish I was. Elena pointed to a specific document. This is an email I wrote 5 years ago, questioning the ethics of a hostile takeover Damien orchestrated. The target was a family-owned company. Good people. He didn't just buy them out. He ruined them first to drop the price. The father had a heart attack. The daughter lost everything. Why are you telling me this? Elena's expression softened with something like pity. Because I've been watching you, Victoria. I've seen how he looks at you. How he's already started using his power on your behalf. What he did to James Parker? That's just the beginning. Damien doesn't love people. He collects them. And when you're in his collection, you become another tool in his arsenal. That's not true. He told me he loves me. I'm sure he does, in his own way. Elena stood, leaving the folder on the bench. But love doesn't change what he is. Sooner or later, he'll ask you to do something that crosses a line. And you'll do it. Because by then, you won't know where you end and his empire begins. She walked away, leaving Victoria alone with the documents. With shaking hands, Victoria opened the folder and started reading. Each page was worse than the last. Evidence of manipulation, destruction, ruthless ambition wrapped in polished corporate speak. And there, at the bottom, was a photo. Damien, 5 years younger, standing outside a courthouse. In the background, barely visible, was a woman being led away in handcuffs. Victoria read the caption. Tech entrepreneur Damien Cross denies involvement in former partner's arrest for corporate espionage. Her phone rang. Damien. She let it go to voicemail, unable to hear his voice right now. A text came through immediately. Please come home. Let me explain. Victoria stared at the message, then at the documents in her lap. Everything Elena said could be true. Or it could all be manipulation, a calculated strike from someone with a grudge. But either way, one thing was clear. Damien had secrets. Dark ones. She gathered the documents and stood, her decision made. Damien was waiting when the elevator doors opened. He looked like he hadn't slept, his shirt wrinkled, his hair disheveled. The moment he saw her face, something in him crumbled. You met with her. Who is Elena Petrov? Victoria's voice was steady, cold. Someone who wants to hurt me by going through you. That's not an answer. She threw the folder on his marble counter. Tell me the truth, Damien. All of it. He stared at the folder like it was a bomb about to detonate. When he looked back at her, his eyes held a desperate kind of honesty she'd never seen before. Everything in there is true. The confirmation hit her like a physical blow. Victoria stumbled back, pressing her hand against the counter to steady herself. I built my empire by being ruthless, Damien continued, his voice rough. I found weaknesses and exploited them. I destroyed people who stood in my way. I told myself it was just business, that everyone in my position did the same things. And for a long time I believed it. The woman in the photo, your former partner, Sarah Mitchell. We started the company together. She tried to steal my code and sell it to a competitor. I didn't just stop her. I made sure she'd never work in tech again. She went to prison for 2 years. Damien's hands clenched into fists. I was 24 and terrified of losing everything I'd built. So I became someone terrifying instead. Victoria's eyes burned with unshed tears. Why didn't you tell me any of this? Because I knew you'd look at me exactly the way you're looking at me right now. He moved closer, but stopped when she flinched. Because I've spent the last 5 years trying to be different. After Elena quit and told me I was becoming a monster, I changed how I operate. I'm not that person anymore. But you destroyed James in a day. You used all that power for me. And I'd do it again. Damien's voice cracked. That's what you don't understand, Victoria. I was willing to be the villain the world sees if it meant protecting you, but I drew lines I never crossed before. I didn't manufacture evidence or ruin innocent people. I simply exposed James for exactly who he was, and let the consequences play out. How am I supposed to believe anything you say? You're not. Damien's shoulders sagged, defeat washing over his features. That's the hell of it. I've built my life on power and control, and none of it means anything if you don't trust me. So I'm gonna do the only thing I can. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, and turned the screen toward her. It was an email to his board of directors. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO of Cross Technologies. Victoria Chen will assume my voting shares and board position. All decisions regarding the company will go through her. I'm removing myself from operational control. Victoria's breath caught. What are you doing? Giving you all the power. Damien set the phone down, his hands steady despite the chaos in his eyes. You want to know if I love you or just want to own you? Here's your answer. Take my empire. Dismantle it if you want. Use it however you see fit. I'm giving you everything, and I'm asking for nothing in return except a chance to prove I can be the man you deserve. Damien, I can't just take control of a billion-dollar company. I don't know anything about running a tech empire. You'll learn. You're brilliant, Victoria. You always have been. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know my past is ugly and complicated, but if you walk away now, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what we could have been. And I'll spend the rest of mine knowing I let the only person who ever really mattered slip through my fingers. Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the billionaire titan or the ruthless businessman, but the boy from her neighborhood who used to walk her home from school, the friend who sat with her when her father died, the man who'd loved her for 11 years without asking for anything in return. I need time, she finally said. I need to figure out who I am outside of your shadow and mine. Pain flashed across Damien's face, but he nodded. How much time? I don't know. Maybe months, maybe longer. And if I wait, will you come back to me? Victoria's heart fractured. I don't know that either. She turned toward the elevator, and this time, Damien didn't try to stop her. As the doors began to close, she saw him standing alone in the vast penthouse, backlit by the city he'd conquered, but looking more broken than she'd ever seen him. The elevator descended, carrying her away from the man she loved and the life she wasn't sure she wanted. Her phone buzzed one final time. A text from Damien. Whatever you decide, you're still the best thing that ever happened to me. Victoria closed her eyes as tears finally spilled down her cheeks, knowing that the hardest decision was still ahead. 6 months later, Victoria stood in the boardroom of Cross Technologies, looking out at the city skyline that had once seemed so foreign. Now it felt like home. The company had thrived under her leadership, not despite her youth, but because of her fresh perspective. She'd dismantled some of Damien's more aggressive divisions, restructured others, and built something that made money without crushing souls. The board had been skeptical at first. 24 years old, no tech background, handed the keys to a billion-dollar empire, but she'd proven herself in ways that mattered, earning respect through results rather than intimidation. She hadn't spoken to Damien in all that time. He'd kept his word, stepping back completely, letting her make every decision without interference. She'd heard through industry contacts that he'd started a small consulting firm, nothing like his former empire. He was helping startups, mentoring young entrepreneurs, building something meaningful from scratch. Every night, she thought about calling him. Every morning, she talked herself out of it, until today. Her assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Chen, there's someone here to see you. No appointment, but she says it's urgent. Elena Petrov walked in, and Victoria's spine went rigid. The last time they'd met, Elena had shattered her world with revelations about Damien's past. I'm surprised you got past security, Victoria said coolly. I told them it was about Damien. Elena sat down without being invited, her expression grave. There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you 6 months ago, but I was too angry to see clearly. I'm not interested in more ammunition against him. This isn't ammunition. It's the truth I left out. Elena pulled out another folder, smaller this time. After I confronted you in the park, Damien called me. He offered me $20 million to leave you alone, to disappear and never contact you again. Victoria's breath caught. And you took it? I refused. But then he said something that's haunted me ever since. Elena opened the folder, revealing a single document. He said if I really believed he was a monster, I should know the whole story about Sarah Mitchell. Victoria took the document, scanning it quickly. It was a police report, dated 2 years before Sarah's arrest. A restraining order filed by Damien against Sarah Mitchell for stalking, harassment, and threats of violence. I don't understand. Sarah wasn't just Damien's business partner. She was obsessed with him. When he refused to date her, she tried to destroy him by stealing his work. The corporate espionage was real, Victoria, but so was her instability. Elena's voice softened. Damien had evidence that could have sent her to prison for a decade. Instead, he negotiated a plea deal that got her 2 years and mandatory psychiatric treatment. He even paid for her legal defense. Victoria sank into her chair, the document trembling in her hands. Why didn't he tell me this? Because he doesn't make excuses. He told me the same thing he probably told you. He's done terrible things in business, and he owns that. But the man I painted as a monster? That was my anger talking. I left because I couldn't handle the pressure of working for someone so driven. I blamed him for my own limitations. Why are you telling me this now? Elena stood, moving toward the window. Because last week I ran into him at a coffee shop. He looked hollow, Victoria, like someone going through the motions of living without actually being alive. And when I asked how he was doing, you know what he said? She turned back, her eyes glistening. He said, "She's thriving, and that's all that matters." He's been following your success, watching you from a distance, proud of everything you've accomplished. Victoria's throat tightened. Elena, I don't know why you're really here, but if this is some kind of game. No games. I'm here because I realized I tried to save you from the wrong thing. I thought I was protecting you from a man who would consume you. But the truth is, he's the one being consumed. By guilt, by love, by the distance between you. Elena moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Whatever you decide, make sure it's based on the complete truth, not the fragments I gave you. After Elena left, Victoria sat alone in the vast boardroom, staring at the police report. 6 months of building walls, of convincing herself that walking away was the right choice, and now those walls were crumbling like sand. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Emergency board meeting called. Marcus Chen is making a hostile takeover attempt. He's leveraging some old contracts from Damien's era. Meeting in 1 hour. Victoria's blood ran cold. Marcus Chen was a ruthless corporate raider, no relation despite the shared last name. He'd been circling Cross Technologies for months, waiting for a weakness to exploit. She pulled up the contracts he was using as leverage. Complex, multi-layered agreements that Damien had structured years ago. She'd need days to untangle them, and she had less than an hour. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone, scrolling to the number she'd saved but never called. It rang twice before he answered. Victoria. His voice was rough, like he'd been sleeping or hadn't slept at all. I need your help. Marcus Chen is trying to take the company. Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Send me everything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Damien walked into the boardroom like he'd never left, thinner than she remembered, with shadows under his eyes and gray threading through his dark hair. But when his eyes met hers, the intensity was unchanged. Show me what we're dealing with, he said. All business. They worked side by side for 40 minutes, Damien dissecting Marcus's strategy with brutal efficiency. By the time the board arrived, they had a counter-strategy that would not only block the takeover, but leave Marcus vulnerable to his own tactics. The meeting was a bloodbath. Marcus had come prepared for the inexperienced young CEO. He hadn't prepared for Damien Cross, even diminished and operating from the shadows. When it was over, Marcus had retreated, his takeover attempt shattered. The board filtered out, leaving Victoria and Damien alone in the boardroom as the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. Thank you, Victoria said quietly. I couldn't have done that without you. Yes, you could have. You'd have found another way. You always do. Damien stood, gathering his notes. I should go. Wait. Victoria's voice cracked. Don't leave. Not yet. He turned and she saw it then. The careful distance he was maintaining, the wall he'd built to protect himself from hoping too much. I know about Sarah Mitchell, she said. The real story. Elena came to see me today. Damien's expression didn't change. Elena talks too much. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe the worst? Because the worst is still true, Victoria. I'm not innocent just because Sarah was unstable. I did destroy competitors. I did build this company on ruthless ambition. He moved closer, his voice dropping. I've spent 6 months trying to become someone worthy of you. Someone who builds instead of destroys. But I can't erase who I was. I'm not asking you to erase it. I'm asking you to let me see all of it. The darkness and the light. Victoria stood, closing the distance between them. I've spent 6 months learning how to lead, how to be powerful without losing myself. And I realized something. You gave me this company not to control me, but to set me free. You sacrificed everything because you loved me more than you loved your empire. Damien's eyes glistened. I'd do it again, 1,000 times over, I know. And that's why I'm asking you to come back. She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining like they'd done 1,000 times before. Not as my employee or my mentor. As my partner, in business and in everything else. I want to build something together. Something that's ours. Something that proves power doesn't have to be poison. Victoria, you don't have to do this because you're grateful, or because you feel guilty about walking away. I'm doing this because I love you. The words fell from her lips like rain after a drought. I loved you when I asked you to ruin me. I loved you when I left, and I've loved you every single day in between. I was just too scared to admit that loving you meant accepting all of you, even the parts that terrify me. Damien's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away tears she didn't realize she'd shed. I'm still scared of losing you. Then hold on tight and don't let go. Victoria smiled through her tears. We're both broken in our own ways, but maybe broken pieces can fit together better than whole ones ever could. He kissed her then, and it was different from every kiss before. It wasn't desperate or possessive or tentative. It was a promise, a beginning, a choice made with open eyes and full hearts. When they finally pulled apart, the city lights were glittering below them like fallen stars. So what happens now? Damien asked, his forehead resting against hers. Now we build an empire together, one we can be proud of, one that doesn't require us to sacrifice our souls. Victoria grinned, feeling lighter than she had in months. And you move back into the penthouse. I've been rattling around in there alone for too long. Just like that. After everything. She kissed him again, softer this time. I told you once that I was all in. I meant it then, and I mean it now. No more running. No more hiding. Just us figuring it out together. Damien pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her like he was afraid she'd disappear. I don't deserve you. You're right. You deserve better than the scared girl who ran away instead of fighting for what she wanted. Victoria looked up at him, her eyes clear and certain. So let's both become the people we deserve. Together. Outside the windows, Chicago stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. They'd both been broken by their pasts, scarred by their choices, shaped by their fears. But standing there together, with the weight of their mistakes behind them and the future ahead, they were finally whole. Love hadn't fixed them. It had simply given them a reason to fix themselves, and that, Victoria realized, was enough. The end.